Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today is a bit exciting. I've never done a reaction video and we're going to be reacting to Gooby and Dooby's viral videos. I think it's Dr. Gooby, the neurosurgeon who quit, and he has a mega viral video he posted 2 weeks ago about why he quit. And so as two family medicine residents, we're going to be going over that. Today's especially special because I have a special guest on the channel that you guys haven't met yet, my wife Aisha. And Aisha can tell you guys a little bit about herself and what we're doing.
Hey everyone, I'm so happy I finally get to meet you all, and I'm so proud of my husband for building this channel. So the reason we're in Drumheller is because I'm actually completing the first block of my second year of family medicine residency in rural medicine. It's a cute town, it's beautiful, the people are amazing, and best of all, it's full of dinosaurs. So yeah, thanks for inviting me, and I'm excited to react with you.
So a little bit of background about both of us. If you're new to the channel, my name's Abdul. I'm one of the PGY1s, currently in family medicine in Newfoundland at Memorial, and Aisha is at Calgary. So it was very interesting to watch Gooby and Dooby's video as family medicine residents and up-and-coming doctors now. So let's get right into it, and we'll start with the first 40 seconds of this video when he tells us a little bit about himself. So,
hi, I'm Gooby from Gooby and Dooby. So I used to be a neurosurgeon. I went to college at MIT and did 4 years of medical school and 6 years of neurosurgery training, and I was a neurosurgeon for almost 10 years after all of that. So that's 20 years of my life. And I quit. I quit last year, and nobody understood why I quit.
I think that's like, while being in medical training, him just saying I quit hit really hard, because I don't think either of us could imagine saying that in our residencies right now. So what he's done here is a bit insane. Like, it looks insane from the outside of medicine, but when you're inside medicine, it looks even more insane. So a lot of credit to him for being brave and, getting out of this career, because it's very hard to get out of. And, as we know in America, like, so many residents, the depression rates among physicians and residents, it's very hard to step back, and people end up in a very difficult place in their life where they feel like they can't go on anymore. But he was able to get out, and, good for him.
It's crazy to leave a career like medicine behind, and I'll explain a little bit of why I think it is. When you try to get into medical school, even before getting in, you invest so much of your emotional, your physical, your mental health, and then there's so many sacrifices that you make in your social and personal life, and it's something that takes up oftentimes like 80 to 90% of your life just to get into medical school. And then when you're in medical school, the sacrifices continue on a personal level, and then on the physical, emotional, and mental level. And they only get deeper, and then the time only gets longer. And so you get so far deep into this road, you invest so much that at the very end of it, what you're looking back at is this mountain of investment. And when you don't have a backup plan, I'm sure you guys can relate. I'm sure you guys all have gone through situations in life where you've invested 100% of yourself and probably understand why it's so difficult. And I think that's probably why this video has resonated with so many people. That's just one aspect, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely it struck a chord with a lot of people, because they feel like they're stuck in a career that they just can't get out of. They have bills to pay. So I think what was most interesting about this video was that, there's a lot of YouTube videos that are like, oh, I've quit medicine because I've had a great YouTube channel like Ali Abdal, and there's a couple other YouTubers, Kevin Jabal, big famous YouTubers that are doctors. Their channels blew up, and they're like, oh yeah, well, there's no point doing medicine now. But for him, he has a very honest story where he's like, something that most people can relate to is that he wanted to get out of a career, and he had no backup plan. And I think that resonates with a lot of people, that they want to get out of this career, but they have bills to pay. And this guy somehow did it. And I think, I can't even think of doing that, because the amount of debt we have interest payments, we're just not financially there to quit. But and the time commitment too. He said he went from 20 to 29 becoming a neurosurgeon, and then he spent the next 10 years being attending. So that's a huge chunk of your life. Like, and his residency is not easy. Like, he sacrificed a lot. Now we're in residency, we know like how much sacrifice it takes. It's crazy that he did, but you know, huge credit to him.
And I think the other reason why he's so courageous is because he did something I can only say is so raw and really honest. He went into a career with a certain purpose in mind. He invested so much time to achieve that purpose. And then he realized that that initial purpose wasn't being met. And he made the very honest choice, which I think was most honest to why he initially even went into medicine, which was to quit. And I think being honest with yourself after you've put in so much effort is something that truly takes a tremendous amount of courage.
So I think that's a very important point. I've seen the video before, and he comes back to this point where, you know, he got into this career to help people suffer and help people relieve suffering.
I became a doctor to help people, and I remember at the beginning of medical school when I was just starting, there was a ceremony, and we all took a Hippocratic oath. I remember there was one of the older faculty docs, and he said that your job as doctors is to relieve suffering. It's not to do a surgery or give a pill. It's to relieve suffering. That might be from doing a surgery or a pill, but it might be just listening, acknowledging what someone's going through. That stuck with me all through medical school and residency and afterwards.
And eventually he found out that, you know, that's not the case, and he wasn't helping like people do that. There was a lot more suffering that was going on that he could do anything about. So I think it's an important point because so many of us get into this career thinking that we're gonna be superheroes and that we're gonna relieve the world's suffering. And you know, 99% of the doctors that I meet, they like the original goal is always like to help people. It's always to help people, and it's very hard to stay in this career when you feel like you're not helping people. You know, as soon as you think that you're not helping people, it's, you know, it's kind of like, well, what are you doing here type of feeling. But that's kind of, I think it's a very important point to highlight.
Absolutely. And, you know, relieving suffering is at the core of the Canadian model. Even starting off in medical school, before we've entered our specialties, we learned something called FIFE, which is this thing called feelings, ideas, fears, expectations. And it's just to help us get a better understanding of where the patient's suffering is coming from and what are their ideas in terms of what could help relieve this suffering. And then, of course, we add our own expertise to it. And not only is this taught in the Canadian medical model, but it's also very cemented in family medicine training. One thing that my rural preceptor actually told me just the other day was all we can do for these patients is see how we can help make their life just a little easier than it is. And sometimes that means an extra laboratory test because it can be suffering to think you have an illness and be constantly anxious about it when you don't. So we're always looking for ways to relieve suffering and make patient lives easier. There's so many different ways to heal in medicine.
This dream of being able to give people robotic arms or legs, I don't think will ever happen. And that's because the brain knows that these small electrodes that listen to the brain are not part of the body. So it rejects it, builds up a wall of scar, and then the electrodes that can't hear the neurons, the little tiny cells in the brain that send the signals. So the goal that I wanted to accomplish, which was to become a neurosurgeon who specializes and does research on brain-machine interface work, I thought that would not work out in the end because of those limitations. And after putting in 4 years plus, at that time, 5 years of my life, that's 9 years of from 20 to 29 years old. That's like the prime of my youth. I had invested it in doing medical school and learning how to do brain and spine surgery. At the age of 29, I realized that where I wanted to go, I would never be able to make it. It's just not possible. And after putting 9 years of my youth into that job, I didn't want to throw that away. So in my last year of residency, I learned how to do spine surgery because that's what most neurosurgeons do. It's the most common thing. It's what a regular neurosurgery job is fixing people's worn out necks and backs. And I had good teachers to do that, and I graduated and I got my first job, and I knew that something was not right away. I had good partners. I had good hospitals that I worked at.
So I think like I feel so bad for him because he just outlines exactly why. Like I mean that's what the video is about, but it's so hard listening to someone like lose their purpose. Like he came out, he spent all this time to relieve suffering. He lost purpose, and like he doesn't think I don't know anything about brain neurons or anything like that, but I would hope that one day it would work. But it just listening to him, it feels like it completely broke him when he heard when he realized this is not something that might work in his research. So I don't know, it's just very hard hearing that.
Medicine takes a lot from you. It gives a lot to you too when you see your patients get better, but it takes a lot. And on those days when it's really cutting at you, it's tough. And my best friend, she gave me a keychain, which I always look at the end of a really difficult day, and it says, "Remember why you went into medicine and know that it'll all be worth it." The remember why you went into medicine is really critical, because throughout medicine, when you're applying into medical school, when you're applying into residency, when you're applying into fellowship, when you're applying into specialization, you constantly have to prove yourself and tell them what your purpose is. And then getting to a point where that purpose no longer brings you back at the end of a really hard day, when you can no longer see that purpose is actually being met, I can only imagine how difficult it was for him to recover from that. Now, I'm no expert in neurosurgery. I just finished my first year of family medicine residency, and I can't fully understand where he's coming from just because of that. But I understand the part where he says that he felt burnt out because his purpose wasn't being met. Because for me, at the end of my bad days, that's what keeps me going.
I also think like the goal, like relieving suffering, you could be the best doctor, you could be the best family medicine physician, you could be the best surgeon, but like there's so much more suffering than what you can do. And I think when you're getting into medical school, you're very naive, but this is something you learn, I guess, throughout medicine, is that you're playing a very small part. Like when someone comes in, like I just did my internal medicine rotation, and I realized I was seeing patients that they did their life, everything happened for like 10 years before they met me, and now they're here in the hospital. They lived a full life before they've come into the hospital, and what you can do in the hospital is not much, like to undo 10 years worth of adverse habits or maladaptive behaviors. All you can do is like help someone where you found them in a way. Like it's very difficult to relieve all suffering. There's just so much going around that even if you're the best doctor, even if you have a team of best doctors, there's really no saving like a lot of people. But it's hard to fathom that, but that's the reality.
100%. 100%. I think you have to realize at the end of the day, you're one person, you're one part of the bigger picture. Healing includes so many different aspects. There's the biological, psychological, sociological, spiritual aspect, and you're only playing one small part there. And you have to also understand at the end of the day that you can only do so much. Your patient has to be the one that's moving the ball. You can just show them where the ball is, and then it's on them. And you have to learn to almost dissociate yourself in a way. One of my preceptors put it in a way as you have to imagine yourself as a health consultant. You give them the best advice that you possibly can. You connect them to all of the resources that you have physical access to. If they don't pick those resources, it's not on you to relieve that suffering, right?
I think he also gave a really good house analogy, and we'll play that now.
A PA, a physician assistant that I worked with, he made a good analogy that the surgeries we're doing is like this. It's like you have a house and the roof top of your house has a leak somewhere, and rain water is coming down into the house and it's ruining the drywall, and you can see it. You can see water damage. The surgeries that I could do were like going into that house, tearing down that drywall, ripping out the moldy insulation, putting in brand new insulation, and rebuilding the wall, but not fixing the leak in the roof. That's what I was doing. And the way I realized that is that
So I think that's kind of crazy how he came down. Like, so later on in the video, he also talks about what worked for people, and he obviously realized that surgery wasn't helping everyone, and surgery is obviously not for everyone. So later on, what he did was he asked patients, what did they do? Because it worked for some people and it didn't work for other people. So he kind of started asking every question. He's like, what do you eat? Do you sleep? Do you hang out with your friends? And he found out that the people that got better, diet was the most important. They had a low salt, mostly plant-based diet. People would do something that made them sweat. They had a good support network. They slept 8 hours every day. They wouldn't stress. They were mindful, and even if they did stress out, they had like a good outlet. And the opposite was true for people, where it didn't work surgery didn't work for them, where it was, they smoked like crazy, they had no friends or very poor social network, they're couch potatoes, they drank like crazy. And I think, through his video, he had like a 20-year lesson on basically finding the basics of life. I would consider that like the basics of life. Like, if you want to do well in life, like having like 4 principles would help you. But it's just interesting, like his analogy for the roof in the house, like you could do everything. You could have the best surgeon, but if you don't have the basics down, I don't know, it's very difficult to help you.
So, like I said before, healing is multifactorial. I'm going to say it, and I've said it multiple times, but it's a core tenet of family medicine. I'm a big fan of multidisciplinary care. You need your physiotherapist, you need your dietitian, you need your family doctor, you need your surgeon, and you need your patient to be willing. If you take osteoarthritis, for example, like severe osteoarthritis of the knee, you can lose weight. That'll take some pounds off the knee. I think for every pound you lose like 4-something pounds off the knee. You can do weight-bearing exercises to strengthen the muscles, to loosen the tension off the knee. But if you have a severely osteoarthritic joint, your joint space is so narrow that the bones are rubbing on each other, causing pain. And you need to replace all of that interface, like all of those torn, worn down parts of the house where the water's leaking, right? So I think that the care that he's providing, and spinal surgery, from my understanding, is an orthopedic and neurosurgery, is very important for some patients. They need that because their disease is just so significantly progressed that they need that extra support. But then you also need to have those other aspects of the care, with the physiotherapist being involved, with the family doctor being involved. Sometimes there's a component of chronic pain and mental health that's involved, and they all play their part. And the other really important thing to acknowledge is that every single patient is different. I saw a patient a while ago, thought they had a broken hip. It was not in fact broken. It was just severely osteoarthritic. Now you can have multiple patients with similar presentations, similar findings in the x-ray, but their lifestyle is different, their life circumstances are different, their comorbid illnesses are different. And so this presentation is going to be different for each and every single one of them. And there's no textbook answer to the perfect resolution of this illness. Every single one of them is going to need a unique intervention.
I think there's something also to be said. Like, I know, he very clearly lays out like what helps people: the diet, the exercise, all of these things. Not having any bad habits. But oftentimes, what we're having in our clinics, like especially in family medicine, is like a lot of people want like a quick fix. Like, they do want that surgery. They do want something ASAP. They want a med, they want something, and it's very difficult because you're trying to help them in realizing all aspects. Now, a lot of patients will need like medication. They will need intervention, right? Just, but there's like a 50-50. Like some people really do need it, and then some people you're trying to manage them conservatively, and it's very hard because they think that you're not doing your job, or they think that you might not know anything. So there's a lot of pressure like in that aspect as well, where you're trying to manage people, some people who want a quick fix versus those that are willing to work with you to help change the lifestyle. Because if you don't change the lifestyle, like whatever problem you have, it will catch up with you. Like we could give you a quick fix, but as Aisha said, like it also involves, like you could get a knee replacement, but if you don't control your lifestyle, obviously it's not in everybody's control. Not everybody's able to make the change, but if you're not working towards that, it's one hip, at one time, or one knee joint, and then it's going to be the next knee joint. And, so it's very difficult managing both sides of the spectrum, where you're trying to manage someone, trying to figure out the root cause, but then you also have 15-minute appointments, and people have expectations that you're going to give them something. You're going to order a test. You're going to do something.
You can also just book another appointment with them, right? That's the benefit of family medicine.
I know, but you're just trying to help them right then and there, and there's not a quick fix to everything. And it's very hard to help people realize that. That's part of our job, but it's just hard communicating that hey, maybe, I won't give you a drug, but let's do this. But yeah.
And I think that it takes time, practicing. That's a skill that we work on. I think the number one thing, and you'll find that most patients are pretty reasonable if you're able to do this the right way, is knowledge is power. So I really believe in empowering patients with knowledge of their condition. And I find that when I do have the opportunity to spend the time with the patient to do that, they're quite receptive to the interventions that we advise. And they're quite open to at least giving them a shot. And you'll have those patients, who are probably, on the verge of, and sometimes they do develop lung cancer because they smoke. And that's just not something that they want to change. But then they'll suddenly open up in other aspects of their life and be willing to listen to you and, work together to improve their quality of life. But yeah, I think family medicine is just about building that rapport and that relationship with patients, so that when the opportunity and time arises for them to kind of heed your advice, you're able to do that.
I think he should have gone into family medicine. As a neurosurgeon, he's on the quick fix side of things. So I feel like we could divide medicine in like a quick fix side of things and versus
personalities, quick fix personalities.
Well, specialties that are like, okay, one and done, we're gonna see you, we're gonna fix your problem, and then we're gonna let you go. And then family medicine is like, okay, we're gonna sit down with you, we're gonna work on like everything that's going on in your life. So he's definitely, like, listening to him, I think like he found himself on the other side of medicine, where he's on the quick fix side of things. Like he's a neurosurgeon. I don't think he would have time to really sit down with patients and tackle all of their problems, which is what he wants to do, what he's finding in his patients. He's like, if you fix your diet, your exercise, if you fix your core problems, then, as you said. But I think there's two sides of medicine. There's like the holistic side, and then there's the rapid response side,
I think one thing I'm sort of missing, I guess, as a part of his story is the system that he was working in. Because I know, for example, we have a spine clinic in Calgary. It's called Calio. And they're quite involved. They have spinal physiotherapists, they have spinal nurse practitioners, then they have the spinal surgeon, and they are all like very multidisciplinary involved team in sort of rehabilitating patients. And I think there's probably somewhere, some farm, where the spinal surgeons do make some money. Probably not as much as they're making doing the surgery. Definitely not as much as they're making doing the surgery. But I think they're definitely making some kind of money if they're running that service, which is so like integrated. And I don't know what system he was a part of, so it's really hard for me to comment on that. But I have a feeling perhaps he may have thrived in a system like we have here in Calgary. I think there's also that aspect, because I think model of care definitely changes from country to country, from province to province, from hospital to hospital. And family medicine looks different in Canada, it looks different in the US, it looks different in England.
I think this is a good segue into the system, like his thoughts on the system. But just in general, I just think like as a surgeon, like if you're a surgeon anywhere, like you're just working on like the immediate problem, like in my opinion. I don't know. Like it's very hard for surgeons to talk to patients. So I feel like he wanted to talk to patients and tell them that, hey, this is what you need to do. But like, yeah, I don't know.
I feel like that's where me and you, and I think it's fine to agree to disagree. I think that's where me and you might disagree. I had a really good experience, I think, working with some knee orthopedic surgeons here. And yeah, you're right. They fix the knee, and then the patients follow up and the orthos make sure the knee's still working. And they get them involved in the physiotherapy and all of those aspects of care. And if the knee's going well, they don't need to be further involved. But there is a little bit of multidisciplinary care I think they're involved in to an extent. And my general surgeon that I worked with in clerkship, well, patients actually loved him. They would come to his clinic, and we know clinic. I know clinic was not necessarily his primary favorite place to be. He loves to be in the OR, right? He loves to, but he would follow up with these patients long term. He would still see them if they were having with their troubles post-op, years down the road, and he would try to help them figure things out. So I think practice patterns definitely differ from person to person, system to system.
Surgery to medicine.
Yeah.
So let's listen to this guy's thoughts on the system, which were pretty interesting, I would say.
I guess I'm a bit of an optimist.
I just don't think surgeons are just, let's be real, their primary job is surgery. Their primary job is surgery.
And our primary job is family medicine.
Yeah, it's a difference in job descriptions. When they're doing clinic and they're following up with patients, that's very specific to their surgery. If you have an orthopedic guy, they replaced your knee, they really want to make sure that they did a good job and the knee's working okay. And beyond that, obviously they can't. And you can't expect them to. There's so much to medicine, and they're so short on time that they just can't look at everything holistically. That's somebody else's job in medicine, from their perspective. So I just think that maybe Dr. Gooby found himself on the other side, where his primary focus is just surgery and just figuring out did he do following up with patient and making sure that everything related to their surgery is working well. And obviously you can't expect him to have time to worry about everything else, but he did care about it. Obviously sounds like a very good doctor. He did care about other things and how his patients can be successful overall, not just related to his surgery. So that's something. But anyways, the system, he has something to comment on here. So
if you figure out a way to help patients heal, and that way doesn't include a pill or a surgery, well, then the hospital and the doctor are in big trouble. Because if you figure out a way to help people heal and you can't charge them for it, well, then you've just worked yourself out of a job. Hey, yeah, you know what? This surgery can help some people, but really the best thing that people can do is eat a certain way, exercise, sleep, meditate, be mindful, not be stressed, hang out with their loved ones and friends, and then their back problems will get better. And if Dr. Gooby actually recommended that to his patients and they actually did get better, well, it's a big problem for Dr. Gooby's paycheck and the hospital. Because let's say in that town, everybody ate more veggies and fruits. They really watched the salt intake. They did things that made them sweat, like being outside in the summer, exercising, enjoying fresh air and the nature, and spending time with their loved ones. And they slept 8 hours every day, and they meditated.
So what are your thoughts on that? I actually want to hear your thoughts on that.
My thoughts on that, right. I think I have to collect my thoughts for a second. So let's see. Patients were being told, do all of these things, you'll get better, you don't need surgery.
Who's going to make money?
Family doctors. Family doctors will make money. So one, there's so many patients that need to be seen, so we're never short of patients. Two, you don't necessarily need a pill to fix everything. I agree with that. There's definitely a lot of things that can be fixed without a pill. At the end of the day, I'll still get paid for that appointment, regardless of whether I counsel them to get a surgery, get a pill, or do physio, weight loss diet, and all of these things. And that's because realistically people, disease is a spectrum, right? And because disease is a spectrum, at a certain point in the spectrum, you're just so early on that you don't need any true medical interventions. You just need lifestyle interventions. Then at a certain point, your risk increases, and maybe you need a medication plus lifestyle. And at a certain point, your risk increases so much that maybe you need a surgical intervention. I think from the sounds of it, unfortunately, the system that he worked in did not support a sustainable living if there was not a steady volume of patients coming in, and that at the end of the day ended up producing a really dissatisfying career for him because he felt that he wanted to really integrate that lifestyle aspect. And honestly, I feel that maybe he would get satisfaction pursuing a different line of medicine. And I didn't want to say that because I was telling Abdul was telling me, this guy needs to be a family doctor. And I was like, well, I don't know enough about neurosurgery and his life to say that he would be a family doctor. But I think the more that I reflect on this, what's really sticking out to me is that purpose he wants to be in medicine for, the relieving of suffering, the focus on sort of minimal interventions to make someone better. I think many people in medicine feel that way.
Yeah, I think the incentives. I think it's touching on the incentives. Definitely, maybe the incentives are misaligned. Like if you do give a pill or if you do an intervention, obviously somebody will get paid more. If he goes and does more surgeries, he'll get paid more. The hospital will get paid more. I just think the reality of the fact is like the scenario. Like he says, if you start promoting healthy lifestyle, even if you did do that, there's just gonna be so many people that don't do that. I feel like you're gonna have ample. You don't need to sell your service in surgery to have patients.
Well, I guess maybe when you get so specialized, there's not going to be as many people with those issues.
I just don't see neurosurgery running ads.
I honestly also wonder maybe if there's a partly an issue of maybe having too many neurosurgery staff.
Maybe.
Oftentimes hospitals, what they'll do, at least in Canada for example, is they'll only have one spot for a general surgeon present in a certain area, because if they had two, then they wouldn't be getting enough true cases.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe his system had a quota. This is how many.
No, most systems do have a quota.
This is how many X. They were more business aligned. How do we increase revenue with increased surgeries?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were probably more. There's a possibility they were more business aligned. But realistically, medicine does work to some level with quotas, and that's why in some areas you'll just have one job posting for a specialist, because realistically, how many cases are you going to get as a specialist? You're going to get less than a general practitioner.
I feel like the incentive thing is very misaligned. You will just get paid more if your person is more medicalized. Conservative therapy is probably the cheapest option for everyone. So incentives are misaligned there. That's true. Obviously, not everybody will share the sentiment he has, that, everyone's experience is not the same, where they don't feel like we're not trying to sell you a service. But yeah, it's just difficult to say. I don't know. The problem is that I don't think there's been a trial of another system that works better. People are gonna have the same amount of problems. It's because we're always medicine in itself is a reactive service. We're not as proactive, and maybe if we were more proactive, there would be less money involved. I'm not sure, but so far around the world, I haven't seen a more a proactive system. Medicine seems to be more reactionary, that hey, you have a problem now, let's try fixing it, rather than trying to make sure that you never have a problem.
I think 100% the system is your healthcare would be so much cheaper and more affordable, or I think there would be less money needed to be put in healthcare if we had a proactive system, because then you have less sick people. The other thing is that there's just so many people that the general specialties, regardless of what type of care they're giving, they're going to be making money. as a family doctor, realistically, even if my patients are, like if I keep my patients well, I'm probably going to have room for a larger patient panel. Meaning like if I'm seeing 200 people, but I work proactively and get them all well and they're not that sick, then I can increase my panel to 300 people. Work on them, then I can increase my panel to 400 people, kind of thing. But yeah, I think medicine does tend to be reactionary, but I do think that there are some aspects of proactive care, and that's when you get into the primary prevention, secondary prevention that's put in place through internal medicine and family medicine. And, you know, surgery also plays a part in that when you heal people after a cardiac arrest or after severe osteoarthritis, as I was saying earlier. Yeah, I don't think I agree with the idea that more medicalization makes more money. While it's right, I think the way at least Canadian healthcare system works is we try to get people better because we know there's other sick people and we don't have enough doctors. So we're always going to have people to see. But I don't know what the scene is like in the US.
But either way, like what Canada or US, like more procedures equals more, someone's making money on that end, right? Like
That's very true, and that's why I'm trying to learn as many procedures as I can. Procedures
there
do
you
make
go,
money.
there you go. But
But-
you hope you don't have a procedure, but at the same time,
Well, not
you're gonna get paid for a service. Basically, like that's just the reality of life, I think.
Like procedures make money, and I am going to have procedures, but I don't need to do a procedure on everybody because I'm still making money even when I don't have to prescribe someone medication.
Fair. Well, I think that's gonna be the wrap on our video. Props to Dr. Gooby. I hope he's doing well. He's out in the mountains. He's definitely enjoying life more than us right now as residents. But I hope, you know, I'm really happy he came out and made this video because it's important to talk about it. I think it struck a nerve, obviously. We just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Dr. Gooby, if you watch this video, I hope you're doing well. And I hope you have a way to transition to family medicine.
Thank you so much for letting me join. And what I want to say to Dr. Gooby is thank you for your courage, and thank you for giving us all, you know, everyone in the medical career, an opportunity to just take time to reflect on their own purpose and see if that career is fulfilling it or not. Yeah, thanks, and thanks for listening. Bye.